broader, to the point where even having a religious belief that goes against these types of behaviors can be something used to justify taking your kid.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the concern, is if we don't start nipping this in the bud and start setting very strong parameters and borders for these agencies to have to stay and operate within, then it can continue to expand and get into other areas, into things like you were just stating that seem very out there, outside of what the norm would be and illogical. But we are starting to see that happening in other states, and it just slowly creeps into all the surrounding states.
Now, I mean, can you explain to me kind of the logic you've encountered with this? Because I know, for example, again, the U.S.-Mexico border issue, child separation. This was a huge issue, especially among Democrats. They were all over it, even to the point where, yeah, sure, if these are human traffickers trafficking children, even in that case, they don't want them being separated. That's how much they cared about it. But in this case, now we're talking about where a doctor can have an opinion or an assumption and then report you, or anybody can have an assumption and report you. It can be done to Americans. Like, what is the jump in logic that you've heard that justifies it on one side but condemns it on the other?
There isn't any. I mean, I don't know how you justify that. If you're concerned about it on one hand, then you should be concerned about it on the other for actual American citizens. But, illogic kind of pervades right now in our society. And, Idaho is a sex trafficking hub because of where we're situated. We have states all around us. We head up to the Canadian border. It's very easy for someone to utilize our state to traffic children through. And so, we have to be very, very careful and diligent about what's transpiring. But we have to set those boundaries and make sure that those agencies, such as CPS, are staying and operating within their boundaries. Yes, again, we want children to be protected. If there are issues going on, we want, to be able to intervene and manage that. We have laws on the books to protect for neglect and abuse. And so they're already there. And if someone is doing that to a child, then they need to be charged for that, and it needs to be handled appropriately. But we are turning more and more over to these agencies to be able to make those decisions and not have to charge parents, and just be able to intervene, take the child. And then again, it goes back to the parents having to prove themselves innocent, even if no charges are brought up, which to me is very wrong. And parents should have due process. That's the other thing. That's the American way of doing things. They have due process. We should be able to utilize that, and parents should not be left out of that picture at all.
Well, you mentioned, of course, human trafficking and child trafficking, which is a whole other issue, but tied to this, actually, because we know that the foster care system is one of the biggest funnels to the child trafficking system. And so they're taking the kids and putting them in an environment where they're more likely to end up as trafficking victims.
Sure.
And so it seems like the state is the least responsible party in this.
Right.
But statistically, when you're looking at like abuse of children.
Yep.
And so how do you see these things relating? And have you challenged this? I mean, what's the state of this?
Yeah, so we're really this House Bill 821 is kind of a new approach to what we're needing to do, where we're needing to start in reining in that government control and that authority. And so, I know that there's connections with the sex trafficking. I've heard of other cases where there's been operation stings that have been done where you have judges involved and doctors involved, and they're getting children, taking them from their parents and giving them to others, and they're being trafficked. So we don't want that to happen, and I'm hoping that it's not happening here. But just in case, our goal right now is to start reining in CPS and their ability to go after parents without, any real needs. Again, we want to protect children that are needing protected. But in this last case that we just had, I mean, I watched it with my own eyes. I'm so glad that it was recorded. It was Facebook Live. And to be able to see that happen firsthand, I was just amazed that what I was watching was what was transpiring. And to have a mother say, I will do whatever you need me to do, and then not even allowing her to be able to come with her child at that point in time, over a doctor's appointment, over rescheduling a doctor's appointment, just seemed just really outrageous to me.
Well, and you hit on something even more serious. I think every parent's worst nightmare, which is the system set up in the way that we've been talking about. I won't go over it again. It's set up in a way that makes it so easy to do. And if you have corruption at any point tied to human trafficking, this is just a channel to take take kids.
Absolutely.
You mentioned, of course, cases where judges have been found working with doctors, and that's all it takes to basically have a human trafficking ring with children when they could just take anybody's kids.
At any time and for anything. And again, it's up to the parents to have to prove their innocence. Now, government has, it seems like an unlimited supply of money and attorneys and whatever it's needing, but families don't have that. They're working. With one of these cases, the family, the mother was saving money to buy a house. She had to use all of her money to go into legal expenses to be able to fight to get her child back and to start getting her name cleared up. So it's putting families at a great disadvantage when these things happen because they have to go to the expense and through the time and the energy